Right, so I'm going to be giving this little tutorial about how to draw a scene on SketchUp. Now, mind you that this is me repeating stuff that's widely available on the internet, and it will just be showing just a little of what you could do, but it's totally something that you should attempt to learn on your own. All right, so we've started SketchUp over here. The first thing that I'm supposed to show you is that you have this toolbar here that has uh, different tools that you can use. You can also access your tools over here. A lot of the times I'll be using shortcuts, and as you can see, these are the shortcuts that you have here. E for eraser, is the bucket for adding color and materials. This is one that we'll be using a lot, the move tool. And another one that we'll use a lot is the push pull tool, and the one that we'll be using the most is the pencil. Where is the pencil? Shortcut for the pencil is an L. There you go. This is the one that we'll use the most, the L. We also have a rectangle over here. Because most buildings are rectangular, this is another one that we'll use a lot. So here are the tools that we'll use the most. We'll be selecting, we'll be drawing with our line tool, we'll be creating rectangles, and we'll be using the push and pull tool to extrude some forms. Alright, so let's get started. The first thing I'll do is I'll draw a rectangle. Okay, so I'm going to use a shortcut, and the shortcut for rectangle is R. So there we go. And what I want you to notice here, okay, is that as I draw, the dimensions of the shape that I'm drawing appear here on the bottom right of the screen. So let's try that again. Okay, so I'm pulling it this way, and I can actually enter numbers on my keypad, rather on my keyboard. I can enter the numbers of the dimensions that I want. So for starters, let's enter 80. Okay, we've entered 80 because that's the average length of the block in Braamfontein. So we've entered 80, right? This other dimension in this direction doesn't quite matter right now. What matters is that we start with the 80. Okay, then I use my push tool to extrude this. Okay, and as you can see, if you look at the right hand side, you can see that as I push up, it's showing me my dimensions in meters. Okay, in fact, if you've never used SketchUp before, what you'll see is that at the very beginning, when you start your SketchUp, it will ask you to set your dimensions, and we use meters because that's just how we've been trained. And anyway, that's the South African standard. Okay, so as I extrude once more, I can actually choose how much by entering it onto the keypad. So what we have here is 0.11. I want it to do 0, comma 10, which would be 10 centimeters. Yeah. So I enter that, and as you can see, the shape took form like that. All right. What you want to note about this number that you enter here is that this is not 0.1. This is 0, comma 1, and this is a distinction that you have to make on your keypad, because here you don't use the number pad. Okay, you don't use the point on the number pad. Instead, you use the comma on the keyboard. Okay, you use comma as if you were typing in a sentence. If you use the full stop, it will not be read. Okay, once we've done this, now we can extrude in this direction. Okay, and once more I can enter the number that I want. Now you'll recall that in first year we asked you to measure how wide a street is, and now the chickens have come home to roost because you have to remember that number. All right, so how wide is a street? How wide is one lane in a street? One lane in a street is about 3 meters. Okay, if there are 2 lanes and then there's sidewalks on either side, so how wide is that? You think about that. Okay, so I'm going to enter in a number of 20 to begin with. Okay, so we now have 20. Right, so if we have 20 and we say that each lane is 3 meters, we'll have 6 in the middle, which means that we have I have quite a bit to play with on either side. Anyway, so I'm going to draw the center line over here, okay, and from there I'll move outward, okay. So we say 3 meters. So now the tool that I'm using now is the tape measure tool. You see it over here, okay. That's what I use to create guidelines, and it's the same principle. As I move outwards, I type in on my keypad that I want 3 meters, and 3 meters out there's a line. Again, another 3 meters, 3 meters out there's a line, okay. Now you have to be considerate, not all lanes are 3 meters, so sometimes you might have to go back and do what you did in first year and measure up to see if you're getting the right dimensions. So there you go, 3 meters out. I draw a line. I draw a line. Now these lines here don't really appear in the drawing, so later on you'll have to delete them. Just want to make sure that we are recording, so let's take a little break here too. Yeah, we are recording, so all right. So okay, so we've drawn the lanes. On either side there's parking, so there's another 3 meters for parking. Again, you just type in 3 after you've got your tape measure tool, and then I draw these in. So with that done, now I have the sidewalk kind of appears automatically on the other side, but we want to also draw some buildings. So I'll make the sidewalk 3 meters as well. Okay. Now, this portion over here then is the building. This is where the building will start. Okay, this is the sidewalk, this is parking, this is one lane, this is the second lane, sidewalk, no, parking again, and sidewalk, and then the building. Okay, now let's use the push-pull tool again. Okay, do you recall how tall a building is? How tall is the ground floor of a building? How tall is the first story? You think about that. Okay, once I've gotten one building frontage, now I can work on the other one without having to type in, because I can use this as my reference. So there you go. This building just devoured this poor girl who was standing over here. So I'm going to press Control Z. There you go, we've taken that away. And I'm going to select this object. Ooh, I just objectified a person. I'm going to select this person, okay, and then use the move tool. Let me just do that again. This is the move tool over here. Shortcut for move tool is M. Use the move tool. I'm going to raise this person up. As you can tell, there's a blue line on the blue axis. On the blue axis means that I'm on the Y axis, which means that I'm moving this person either up or down. Okay. Now I'm moving them to the right, and as you can see, we had a green line there that was on the x-axis, or the green axis. As I move them forward, you see there's a red line. Yeah. Now I'm moving them on the z-axis, okay, or the z-axis. Now I'm about to move this object down. And what's nice about SketchUp is when I get to the surface, okay, it says on face. So now you know that this person is stuck on the ground. There's no gap between this person and the sidewalk. Okay, now again, let's extrude this. Now we have that. All right, so we now have our scene. Okay. What I want to also show you is that when you put your push tool against the surface, you get some what would you call this? The surface becomes grainy. This tells you that you can select the surface. Okay, if I select this, you see I can shorten our 80-meter long block so that it can become a bit more reasonable for me to work with. Okay, right, so I can work on it. All right, now I'm going to take down one of these because I'm still working here, and it's very difficult to work on a surface if there's another surface. Let me show you what I mean by that. if there's another wall on this side, I can't see the wall that I'm working on, you see. So right now we'll lower that wall so we can work on it. All right, so now we want to add perhaps windows. Okay, so if we want to add windows, we use our tape measure tool to decide at what point do windows start. So perhaps there'll be a little step up from the ground, a very small step up. So a very small step up from the ground, and maybe let's make this 0,05. Okay, that's like, how is that? Is that 5 centimeters? You think about that. Okay, and then from there we'll have our first window. Now this is because we're drawing a shop window. Okay, so a shop window will start close to the ground, right? So there we go, there's our first window. This is on the ground floor. Okay, and then I use my push tool to push it back. Okay, how deep do you push it back? Again, here this is a matter of knowing how deep the windows on the ground floor are. So I'm going to go with 10 centimeters, which is 0,1 meters. Okay, there you go. We have one shop window. Okay, so we want to repeat this process, and so an easy way to do it is I press Ctrl Z. So I undo that. I undo the push pull gesture that I had made, and now I select the face and I'm going to copy the face. Now copying here is the same as Microsoft Word. It's Control C and I paste. Okay, as you can see, I move the cursor away from the project when I paste, right? And yeah, it's been pasted, and when you paste it, it automatically, well, let's do that again because it created a flat surface. Okay, and we want a vertical surface, not horizontal. So we'll do this again. This time, when I select the face, I go to select and I say select all connected. Oops, that's too much. Let's go again, select, and then I'll say select bounding edges. So now I've selected this object and not just the surface, but its edges as well. Let's try this again. So now that we've selected it, select bounding edges, we Control C to copy and Control paste. Let's see what we have. Oh my god, it's flat again. Ah, there you go. Okay, so it was flat, but when you move it this side, it actually straightens up. Now, you remember that we have this guideline over here to tell us where to put this window, which is a good thing, right? So now we'll decide to put this window down here, and we'll repeat this process several times, right? Because we've got some shops. But you have to recall that you are trying to replicate a scene that meets a particular score. So will having 3 windows make this a highly imageable environment, or will having, 10 windows result in that? So you want to keep that in mind as you're doing this. But I mean, I'd go ahead and really just start by making the scene, and then once the scene is made, then maybe we can decide. Yeah. Okay. All right. So here we are. I want to use the push pull tool now to make these windows 0,05. Yeah. Okay. So we can extrude the back of the building, right? So that we can add more floors to the building. And you can use your tape measure again, right, to decide how far this area should be. Of course, I don't think I need a tape measure for this, so I'm just going to go ahead and decide arbitrarily to put it over here and then extrude the rest of the building. Now you have to keep in mind how high each story is. So the first floor is about 4 meters, and then each consecutive one is about 3 meters. So if I want to make this building a building that is 4 stories high, that means that we've got this first 4 meters, which we've already done, so we don't have to count. We have to add 3 more stories, so 3 times 3 would be 9. So on the bottom right corner where we have our dimensions, I want to type in a 9. Okay, so now we have a 4-story tall building. Okay, and recall our scene will be taken from this position or this position, something like this. Okay, so this is what you would see along this scene. Right. So once more, you can add your windows. Okay. Now, before we do that, let's split this up into stories, right? So I use the tape measure again, 3 meters, remember? And once more, 3 meters. And this is automatically 3 meters. I hope. There you go, it's 3 meters. Turns out I'm not too bad at this. Okay, and then let's use the line tool once more. Every time you use the line tool, what you're actually doing is you're separating one large surface into smaller surfaces. So you see this is now a small surface. This is still one large surface. If I use a line tool on it, it's been split. And what this does is that when you use your push tool, you can manipulate this part on its own. You see I can pull it forward, pull it back. Note that this moves all on its own. And if I try and do that on this one over here, these two stories are still connected. They're still one surface. So that's why I use my line tool to separate them. Okay, so now that's done. Now we want to add some windows. You kind of want your windows to match the windows on the ground floor, just as a design aesthetic thing, right? So maybe you want to use your tape measure here again to make sure that these things are in line. So this tells me that it's vertical, right? And then this tells me that no, something like horizontal, but these are matching. Okay, and then I want to go vertical once more. Okay, so now I have some guidelines for these windows, and you might want to use your tape measure again to decide where do the windows actually start over here, but I'll do it arbitrarily this time around. I'm just going to add some windows. Okay, I'm pulling it in this direction, and I'm going to go for 1, 5 in this direction. Well, that's a small window. And then use the same trick we used before, select bounding edges, and then Control C, Control V, and there you go, we've got this. Now, this time I'm not using guidelines to make sure that these are in the same place, but this is so that I can show you another neat trick. Yeah. We've got this pasted, right? Well, we've got this copied, so it's in the memory of the computer. So while that's happening, let me show you this neat trick. So you see that these are not aligned. So once I push back this surface, right, to create the windowsill, 0,05, that's a tiny windowsill. But let's pretend this is a South Point building, yeah? Okay, so there you go. Now I can select this surface and use this other one as a reference point to make these windows match. Yeah. Okay. And the copied image is still in the memory of the computer, so I can paste again, and I could repeat that process over and over again. Of course, you can see that this is tedious compared to just having a guideline. But if you ever make a mistake, you can always adjust it by using the push-pull tool. Alright, some more windows. Of course, this window is kind of oddly placed. But here we go. Yeah. Once more with the push-pull tool, what I could do, oops, uh, what you might be wondering is how do I actually move around like this? This is this tool over here, the orbit tool, but how I access it on my mouse is the wheel of the mouse. So if I press and hold the wheel of the mouse, then it automatically switches to the orbit tool. And if I roll the window of the mouse, that's when I can zoom in and zoom out. This sounds like something I should have taught you right at the beginning of this tutorial, but hey, this is what happens when a tutorial is just an extra of something that you should have learned by now. All right, so what I wanted to show you here is that because I don't have a guideline to make sure that this window is, what's the word for this, is aligned with this window over here, what I can do is, so let's say that it was grossly misaligned like that. I can use the push-pull tool to bring it into alignment. So what I do is I select the surface that I'm trying to align, and then I select the surface that I'm trying to align it to, and there you go. It happened on its own. Okay, so now you know how to put in windows, yeah? That's fantastic. Okay, so now you want to also add in things like people and things like trees, and on SketchUp, these are found in components. So there you are, components. And here are my components. I go to components sampler. If I type in here what kind of component I want, it connects to the internet and takes me to the Google store. Is it the store? Oh no, it's called the warehouse, the SketchUp warehouse. However, I'm not going to do that right now. I mean, you have to have some homework. So as you can see here are the different elements that you can add. You see I can add a person, a person named Sang. Things that parents do, naming their kids Sang. When I place Sang on the sidewalk, he automatically switches to view, which is great, and whenever I rotate, Sang rotates with me. Poor guy, hard job. Okay, I can also add trees. Not the best of trees, but perhaps that can be in your reflection. As you can see, this tree is quite large, and I'm now thinking where to put it. Should I put the tree in the parking, or should I put it on the sidewalk? You think about that as an event designer. Also, in your reflections, you might want to consider, something like that. Does the scene actually turn out to look better and more imageable if the tree is over here? Because consider this, when the tree is over here, it's actually obscuring many of the details that you're counting. When the tree is on the sidewalk, when the tree is in the parking, what it actually does is it decreases the amount of sky, the proportion of sky that you can see. Let's look at that again. When I move the tree towards the building, more sky is actually visible. When I move it towards the street, it's obscuring, it's shortening the sideline, which, is one of the things that you measure when you talk about enclosure. So you consider that the extent to which enclosure is related to imageability. Okay, I think we're done now with because I've shown you the components. You can now add your own components, and I've shown you how to actually make a building. You can repeat the process for the building on this side. Now, what I want to show you, the last thing I want to show is that we have, when you go to views, you can add shadows. And there you go, there are the shadows. So this building here is north facing because we're in South Africa. It's quite possible that Google thinks it's south facing because, northern hemisphere things. But for us, when we see a view like this building is north facing. And this is the appropriate building to start by drawing. Because if I had started by drawing a building that's south facing, I'll show you this by rotating the scene. Okay, I press Control A, similar to Microsoft, and then I get the protractor tool. This is this tool over here, right? The rotate tool. Let's see what the shortcut is for you. Q. Shortcut is Q, which is okay. So there you go. So now I'm going to do this. what's important to see here is the green line, right, which tells me that I am moving along the x-axis. Okay, so I select 2 points, and then because it's a protractor, it works with the angles, so I'm going to type in 180, and 180 flips this entire scene 180 degrees. So now you can see that this is a south-facing building, and what happens is that all of the light is being cast at the back of the building, and so all of the details are in the shade, and so I can't see them as clearly, right? You see this over here? I can see the details of the building much clearer. So this is the side along which you want most of your views to be, right? So your scene will be taken standing over here. And once more, consider when you're doing this, is it better for the tree to be right here or further back? And what does that actually say about the measurements of imageability? Compare this to a picture, right? Did this particular street score high for imageability because all the trees were on one side compared to, now you can see all the building details over here because all the trees are to one side. They're still performing the function of reducing the sideline and creating enclosure, but you can still see lots of building details over here. What would happen if all the buildings were on this side? So consider that and how it distorts our understanding of imageability when we use a model to measure them. All right, so that's it for this lesson. I have things to do, and I hope that this helps you to do what you're expected to do as well. All right.